Time is money, friend.
Bitch, you'll be cooking that sound.
Hottest producer around.
Welcome, this is Dumisani Theletsane, man. This is episode number 2. There's a Snoopcheck, and today I'm not riding alone. I am joined by the one and only Karl Kikillus. He's been doing this for the longest of time. He's been in the industry for the longest of time. He's a legend. Let me welcome Karl Kikillus. Karl, how are you?
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, Dumi.
Thank you.
And as a way of beginning this chat that we've been looking forward to for some time,
Yes.
you're one of my boys, so I'm well proud of you.
I'm one of your products.
You are one of my progenies. You are
Yes.
one of my proteges.
The
So thank
of
you.
knowledge.
Thank you for that. I
Yes.
would like to think so, and I hope you've derived some benefit from whatever we've exchanged in terms of information, knowledge, and just basic humanity, really. Yes.
I get so disappointed when I see someone who has been in the industry for the longest of time, someone we call a legend, do a silly mistake. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about Tusomotaung of Felicity FM.
Mm-hmm.
He does not put on his headphones when he presents, and now I'm like, oh, what's wrong with this guy? I don't know what his reason is,
Mm-hmm.
but he does not put on his headphones. I remember there was this time when he was presenting, and then his bed music was playing over his adverts, and then he had to play the adverts again because the bed music was tainting his adverts.
Yes.
Remember, that is a product of somebody else.
Exactly.
That is a brand of somebody else, and you don't want to taint that with the bed music.
Exactly.
How important is it to always wear your headphones when you're presenting?
Dumi, as I've taught you guys in the past, I think it is cardinal to wear your earphones, not only in the studio, but when you're recording everything, or even practicing, okay? Developing your brand, doing a demo, doing an interview, whatever the case might be.
Yes.
For me, I think a set of headphones, or cans as we call them in the industry, is your best teacher at the end of the day. Because radio, inasmuch as you can prescribe certain methodologies and tricks and sequences and formulae
Yes.
that would almost appropriate you as a broadcaster, okay? Other people can teach you to a certain point. But at that particular point, then you have to become your own invigilator, or your own editor, and your own worst critic in a sense. Because all of us know that when we listen to our voices for the first time over a microphone, we don't expect to hear what we do. Sometimes we're shocked that our voice sounds unfamiliar and that we're not sounding as we should. And some are disappointed by the fact that their voices come across as being embarrassing or humiliating or disturbing. When you get to that point where you have received sufficient tuition, grooming, and insight into how to practice radio on air,
Yes.
at that point, the headphones become your teacher.
Yeah.
Because there's nobody, as I said, more self-critical than you. And there is almost a subliminal and magical process involved here. When you constantly are aware of what you're saying over the headphones, okay, you have an exclusivity of reception because your mind is constantly, okay, refreshing, reprising, editing, adjusting, and moderating or modulating your voice,
Yes.
okay, because you hear it in the cans. That is the true reflection of how your voice is going out to the listener. If I might just say before you ask your next question, I want to say to students out there who sometimes feel detached from their lecturers or their teachers or those who would want to impart information and knowledge to them, I would suggest to them, ab initio, spend 5 to 10 minutes a day with your headphones on, reading something, anything. It can be more specific. It can be a news bulletin, a weather bulletin, a traffic report, a feature, or an element, or whatever the case might be. But when you're using your earphones, okay, you are more intensely and intimately involved in the process of speaking to people. Okay. And that's why, without being judgmental or ad hominem about the personality that you mentioned, I would be a station manager who would advise him to learn how to use cans in the studio. Because remember, there are 3 lights in the studio, right? Yes. The red light is when the studio is live and you're not allowed to go in, okay? It's verboten, okay? When the amber light is on, the studio is still operational, but it allows you transit of passage, okay? And when the green light is on, obviously we know by now, and it sounds a bit corny and lame, but it is important to remember that, yes, you can come into the studio because we are not doing something which could be disturbed by your entrance. But when that red light is on, remember, your feed, the balance of elements, okay, in your feed to the listener is only heard through your headphones. You can't hear that mix over the speakers.
Exactly.
Okay. So how would you assess whether your voice and the balance of other elements that you're dealing with in your program are sufficiently balanced, arranged in such a way that you get the right mix of elements, that right sound?
Sometimes the bad music is drowning your voice out.
Exactly. And I share your beef with you, because there's nothing more frustrating than hearing somebody who's being drowned out by their pad music.
Yeah.
Okay. Or they don't recognize that the pad music, or the bed music as we call it in the industry, is leaking into the ads. And that is, to me, once again a cardinal error. Because if you're working at a commercial station, we know that the commercial station's lifeblood is its remuneration derived from ad sponsorship and marketing exercises. Yeah. And if you disturb that sacrosanct ground, you can be sure that those people are not going to be happy with the way that you pervade their product. And so if you've got other little irritating and annoying interruptions which are destroying your capacity to avail your goods, products and services to the listener, then you are not living up to your promise of performance. And please, I don't mean this in a personal way, but just generally speaking, when I see a jock sitting in the studio without a set of headphones on, then I can tell you straight away that he is not fully aware of the mix, the sound, and the product that is going to the listener. And here's the problem. It's about the listener. It's not about those people sitting in the studio. It's about the relationship that you establish with the listener. And I've taught you this formula before. And I know it sounds sometimes a little hopeful, a little too optimistic, but it still follows today.
But maybe at the back of his mind is like, you know what, I'm a legend, then so I know what I'm doing.
Yes.
Can we pardon him for that? How does experience come into the equation?
Well, I would firstly point out, despite his supposed legendary status and his supposed experience and his reputation and his popularity, okay, that he still has something to learn, which is a good thing, because radio is a 24-hour exercise. It's very zen. It lives in the now. So you're only as good as your last gig, your last link, your last song, your last performance. And you asked me to come and do a Snoop tape, right? And every day, once you've finished a show, a day part, which is conducted on your watch, you will be called upstairs to the station manager and they will do what is called a Snoop tape. And what do? They don't listen to all the music that you played, because they know what music gets played constantly on the radio station, okay? Almost ad nauseum, you know what I mean. But they want to do a check on how you performed your links and the other obligations, responsibilities and collateral, okay, that comes with being a competent professional and adding value broadcaster.
Presenters would go to a musical break, and then when they come back laughing. I am not against the fact that radio is the theater of the mind, but sometimes they don't share a joke. Is it rude to not share a joke with your listener?
Yes. I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because as I said to you in answer to your previous question, and I'm glad to see that there's a sequence in your questions here.
Yeah.
Okay. If you are not addressing a priori your listener as your fundamental responsibility, okay, then you are not doing the job of radio as it should be done. Who am I to say? Okay, because some people say, throw out the rule book, throw out all of the niceties, and get edgy and get controversial and get up close and personal and make yourself known in that way. Not necessarily a bad thing, but here's the thing. The modern day tendency, okay, is to me too incestuous, nepotistic, and insular. You have a bunch of people sitting in a studio that are chatting to each other, okay, as if they're the best friends, and blowing smoke up each other's noughts, okay? So the listener, who is the primary target, okay, is now rendered or diminished in status to the point where they become eavesdroppers. Okay, they're incidental to what's happening in the studio, and that to me is a fatal mistake. Because I, as a listener, and I'm sure you, would not like to tune into a radio station and immediately you hear a guy coming out of ads and he's laughing in that smug, hubristic way that you find is currently the norm. The listener immediately feels excluded from that particular joke or that particular conversation that happened while the ads were being played. Who are those people to have an interior dialogue amongst themselves and give big ups to each other and think that is entertaining to a person who is actually the listener and the fundamental and essential part of the business, to be left out of that conversation and feel as if they are being neglected or being treated with indifference? Because your first responsibility is to establish contact with the listener. And that's why this modern trend of having too many people in the studio talking to each other tells me one thing: there's not one guy in that studio that's strong enough to hold that program together on his own, right? Yeah. So he needs his buddies there to help, his wingmen, okay? 1. 2, if you're going to crack a joke, and we know how nice humor is on radio, it must be available to the listener. In fact, you should first share the joke with the listener before you share it with your little fans and your little acolytes within the studio. You can come out of ads and say, 10 past 7, it's Footsack FM, good morning to you. You know, we've just been laughing amongst ourselves here. And then you've cracked the egg. You know what I mean? That laugh is explained in the sense that, guys, we're with you. We need to remind you why I'm laughing. And we're laughing because we had a little joke here in studio, and then you share it with the listener. But if you come out of ads, and you just cut to a link or whatever the case might be, the listener is left hanging, annoyed, and excluded from what is happening. And remember, the listener is your client, is your boss. When I was young and a maverick, I thought I knew best how to address a listener. My scar tissue and experience over the years has taught me you should conform yourself and your brand in such a way that the listener thinks well of you, not necessarily you thinking so well of yourself, that your ego is going to prevail. And that's the kind of tendency I'm seeing in studios today, where people are bumping up each other's egos and making themselves out to be something that they possibly are not. But the person who makes the decision in the final analysis is the listener. And I've told you the trick. A listener is arbitrary, is neutral, okay? But when you build a relationship with a listener, whereby the listener becomes your fan, okay, you create that aspect or degree of popularity, which by extrapolation, okay, increases that one listener from 1 to 2. And that's how it works. In some strange and mysterious way, even by word of mouth, you would come to me and say, "Hey, OG, you know, I heard this guy yesterday, and he was throwing it down. And I suggest you listen to him." And I say, "Whoa, we've heard so much boring stuff, my good man. Is it worthwhile listening?" And you say to me, "Definitely sure. You just give that guy a listen, you'll see.
Yeah.
He's doing what is expected, and he's delivering." Once you build up, okay, that popularity, that listener becomes your fan. Okay? And once you've established your fan base, you've got leverage and collateral in the industry. Because whenever you talk to somebody who wants to hear what you're doing, and they want to assess your ability to be exploited or to add value or to extract something from something and distill its essence into something which is valid for the listener, okay? If people are loyal to you as an individual, as a broadcaster, because they like your style, they like your personality, they like the way that you do things, the radio station itself and its call sign becomes irrelevant, because they will follow you wherever you go. Why? Because 9 times out of 10, if you went out here and did a Vox Pops in 11th Street, okay, and you ask people, "Who do you listen to?" "Well, I listen to Fresh." "What station's he on?" "Well, he was there, he's here now, he's here." Which underscores the point that I'm trying to make now, is that when you have the added component of loyalty, other than just being a casual or indifferent listener who can tune in and tune out at any given time, okay, when you have that aspect of loyalty, okay, it's like, let's use a simple analogy, soccer, okay. I'm an Orlando Pirates supporter. It's not looking good, okay, for reasons we won't discuss now, okay, but certainly for Chief supporters, okay, the sun has risen, okay, they've got a new coach, and I need not go into detail, you know that's the case. So as with sport, irrespective of how badly your team is doing sometimes, okay, your loyalty, your allegiance to that particular team or to that particular person remains for as long as your patience lasts, okay. A lot of people are fickle, they change teams overnight, okay. There will always be those people. But my advice is, once you've developed a listenership and you've converted them to fans, okay, then you can speak with authority in this industry, because everybody only looks at you as a commodity and what you can add to the bottom line.
And of course, we are humans and we make mistakes, but some mistakes we can't turn a blind eye to. Are we teaching our future presenters on how to get away with the things they say on air? Because I believe if we did, then DJ Fresh would still be at Metro FM. I don't think we do. Are we teaching our future presenters, youngsters, on how to get away with the things they say on air?
Dumi, are you saying to me that they should be given license to be edgy, explore, be controversial, you know,
Yes.
take the off-ramp and all of that kind of stuff? You've got to break the mold. I'm an advocate for that. I would take that rule book and throw it out the window. But here's the rider to the theorem, and then that guy's got to really be good. In order to break the mold and take the unbeaten path, you know what I mean?
Yes.
The road less traveled, as we say in the cliches, then you've got to be so good. You've got to be so good. You have to have the confidence and the ability to be able to take that vehicle there. It must have 4x4 capability, if I might use an analogy. The middle road, okay, it's easy. I can take my Taz and travel down there. But if you want to develop your brand, which stands out above the others,
Yes.
the controversial, combative, different, eccentric, idiosyncratic, and experimental way sometimes, okay, for me, is one of the futures of radio. Because, dare I say it, 5FM, okay, currently has more Twitter followers than it does have listeners to the radio station. What does that tell us? Radio is moving away from mainstream media. Not that it's lost its shine or importance or its commercial value, but is now used as a driver, the old linear, traditional process of broadcasting to a listener. There's an extra component to that, an addendum. You use that channel to drive listeners to your digital portals. And in that way, you make radio all the more accessible. You touch more bases, and you're available in many more places than just on that frequency. And in that way, being more accessible, like an anchor tenant in every single mall, okay, you have a presence. There's a monetary value attached to that too. When you oblige or you induce listeners to go to other portals, there's a cost factor involved. And remember, we're also dealing with the capitalization of what we're doing. Okay? Break the mold. Don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to say what you really feel. But there is a way to do it without being obnoxious, overly arrogant, insulting, and your feelings, your attitude, your philosophy, or your opinions being laced with hate speech and all of those offensive manners of communicating, which are just unacceptable. You can say what you want to say in a way which is terribly controversial, but the manner, the style in which you do it is the winner at the end of the day. It's like rap music. You know, as good as a rap or a good song is, okay. If I hear the guy swearing for 5 minutes, the swearing interrupts the message that he's trying to convey to me. Is there no better way of conveying how you feel than to constantly drop the F-bomb on me? It's nothing new to me, but after a while it becomes a little lame and like a hoary old chestnut, because you're showing me that you don't have that extra intellectual capacity or artistic talent to be able to say things in such a way that they are lyrical, that they are humane, and not necessarily ad hominem. You know, with broadcasting, it's always a happy day. You can't go on the air and say, "Oh, I'm very sad. I hate life. I hate people."
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm waiting for a guy to go on air and say that kind of thing. You know why? He's going to grab you like that because you want to know what this guy's about. But there's a way of doing it without giving too much offense. And that's why so many broadcasters who pushed the envelope have been censored, because they don't know how to push the envelope.
But do you think that DJ Fresh did it on purpose?
Yes, every now and again, every single broadcaster worth their salt does something a little controversial to attract attention. That's part and parcel of having an agent or an advisor or a mentor who says, "Fresh, and please, Fresh, it's me here. We'll say it in Fresh, it's time to disturb the complacency of the airwaves. It's time to cause a ripple on the pond. Let's chuck a stone in and see what happens." Yeah. So you can play it straight for a long time, then all of a sudden, kapong, you take that off ramp and you shake people by the scruff of the neck with, "What's he doing now? What happened? What caused him to do this or say that or act in this way?" Aha. It is contrived, it is planned.
But how sure are you that you're going to get another job after doing that?
No, there's no surety. But here's the thing. If what you've done is sufficiently popular and it trends,
Yeah.
and Twitter's buzzing, right, with this dude, man, and I see he's been fired. Hey, extra kudos, extra cred for that guy. Oh, so that old man, that radio station had the audacity to fire him because they thought he was being contrary to policy or whatever the case might be. He was contravening regulation standards, you know. That notoriety is as effective as fame. Because today, let's have a look at the media. The ones that are succeeding are all the badasses.
Yeah.
Okay? Podcasts, the Joe Rogan Show, badass. Okay? Alex Jones, badass. Okay?
Just hold on for a minute. Like this. So,
TV. Okay? I need not name them. The guys that are attracting attention, which is what it's all about at the end of the day. Once you've attracted attention, you've got to deliver. Okay? We know that. But at least you've attracted attention. You've got the person to come. And then you've got to give them that performance, right? The guys today that are rattling the industry are the edgy guys. And not edgy in the sense of being weird and woo-woo and kumbaya or that kind of thing, right? It's because they're coming with stuff that's different, Yabon, and stimulating, and doesn't necessarily, I beg your pardon, subscribe to mainstream orthodoxy. Okay? And that continuous stream of monotony, that simulacrum of similitude that you hear on commercial radio. And here's the thing I want to tell you. Why do people still listen to radio? Excuse me. Why do they still listen to radio? But as you can see, and as you guys, Dumi, yourself personally know that I have a passion for this because there's more about radio than just broadcasting to a listener. Okay. There's a far bigger picture at play here. In order for radio to survive into the future, it's not enough for radio to play the same songs over and over again, ad nauseum, and expect people to be exposed to the advertising that makes that radio station succeed and or not. I'm still looking for that powerful, charismatic, individual radio personality who climbs into the microphone and with the magic of his intellect, his knowledge, his understanding of his listener, knows how to speak to them in a way which finds its mark. And because he is knowledgeable, he's aware, and he's identified his target market and his average listener to the point where he's speaking as if he were to his best friend. I want that person to enthrall me and mesmerize me and hold me in the palm of his hand with the power of his personality, his charisma, his heart, his mind, and his spirit. Because that's how we human beings ordinarily should communicate. Okay? It's not one facsimile of somebody projecting an image talking to another person and expecting that person to believe that they're sincere, authentic, and genuine.
So you are against the fact that, or this thing of having more than one presenter in studio?
Not necessarily. Sometimes it's fantastic if you have that wonderful interplay between two studio hosts, okay?
Yes.
And they have a snappy dialogue, and they're really witty, and they're really funny, or they're really informative, or they're really knowledgeable, or they're really up to speed with world events, and they can explain them and deal with them in such a way that attracts and holds the interest of the listener. I need to hear what these guys are saying. But the biggest thing is not to exclude the listener from their performance.
Definitely. Lesedi FM sports presenter didn't pitch up at work this week for about 2 to 3 days. And there was nobody standing in for that person. Now, meaning they didn't have a sports bulletin or a sports update for about 3 days on their breakfast show. Now, for me, as a station manager or program manager,
No.
you should have somebody to stand in for the person that is absent. Now, that tells me that you are not prepared enough. You should have somebody to stand in and carry out the job or the work. What do you think of this, Karl? What do you make of this? Because nobody stood in for her. This is about the listener, as you said. So the listener didn't get the news or the sport news for about 3 days on the big show, that is a breakfast. Whether you are stuck in traffic or you are sick or you are out of town, you should have somebody standing in for you.
That's what you would expect a professional and competent radio station to do. As I taught you guys in first year. Remember the graveyard session?
Yes.
Where a good station manager and a good couple of peeps there at the radio station. No, listen, there's my A-team. They're on air now doing the major day parts, the drive and the breakfast, and we know how it's, ordered. Okay. But when everybody is not listening to radio, or only a few people are listening to the radio, okay, is your opportunity to train your second team in preparation for going on to the bigger shows when such an occasion presents itself. Now, if you've done that, okay, knock at the door. Hi, it's me, the best looking guy you've ever heard, and I'm leaving. And I can promise you I'm going to another radio station and they're paying me double. Thank you. See ya, wouldn't want to be ya. And there's your major artist. Gone, okay, with the biggest listenership on your radio station, and he takes a lot of advertising and all of that goes with it, okay? Problem. If the station manager didn't have a contingency plan or a plan B, where would he be? He's frantically phoning other radio stations or anybody just to say, hey, Broer, Muna, dude, could you come in please and just do a little bit of sport? No, but I can't, because that person that did the sport has already done it in such a way that if I were to try and do it, okay, it would be second rate. It would be diluted. It would be lame. Firstly. Second thing, if you don't have that guy, okay, why can't somebody else do it? Or why can't you pre-record it at least? Okay? And live up to your promise of performance. This is this thing that I'm trying to teach kids now. When you make a promise on radio, you've got to live up to it. And your promise can be implicit sometimes. It doesn't have to be spoken. I expect that every morning at 7:20 I'm going to get my sports roundup from this person. And you didn't even have the temerity or the courtesy to tell me how this one's got COVID-19 or has taken some leave or has gone missing in action. And we promise you, as soon as we retrieve said person, they will present the sports bulletin as you've come to love. But alternately, really, what you should have is a sub on the bench. And that sub is ready to come on. And that's where you have a radio station manager and guys that know their business. Because as soon as that guy walks out of the office and says, you say to him, sharp, sharp, sharp.
Yeah.
You know why? Because what he doesn't know. The next big thing, the next big kid on the block, you've got there by the patches. And you call that dog out of the bushes because he's been practicing and honing his craft on the quieter sections of your radio broadcast. But he's developed to a point where you can say, okay, sub, come on, man. Tomorrow morning's your big chance. Are you ready? Boy, I'm ready. I'm tired of doing that graveyard session. Okay? And then you don't expect the guy to knock it out of the park immediately. You give him a couple of days to settle in. Here's another one of the things that I just want to say, without boring you to tears, is this, that sometimes you hear, oh, big branding, big advertising, this guy is going to blow you away. Okay? And you listen to him the first morning, and you're less than impressed. You're underwhelmed. The guy just sounds dodge, sketchy. Okay?
Yeah.
But that's where an astute station manager who believes in the talent and the development of that guy to the point where he thinks he can fly and shine, should say to him, okay, don't have an aneurysm now. Don't lose all your confidence because you're getting some negative feedback. Okay, very few people do their first show and they crack it 100%. So give that person a little bit of time to establish themselves. And when they have a firm footing, then you will see that things start following consequentially.
And not only about the person that you've been preparing behind closed doors, you have about more than 5 sports presenters. Why couldn't they just call them up to stand in for that person who was upset?
Exactly. I look at your example as an administrative oversight. Okay, it is a lack of programming, planning, and scheduling, where somebody should have noticed, hey, the sports presenter isn't here. And what was said? Oh, don't worry about that, let's just truck on. No, it is part and parcel of your product.
But who's to blame, the program manager or the station manager?
I cannot say. I cannot say. It could be both, it could be one, it could be the other.
Same thing happened at Mamelodi Sundowns. Petrus Motsepe is saying that he's taking the full responsibility of what happened with the Tebohwalanga man.
Nah.
Yes. But Karl, thank you for your time, thank you for your answers. Any final words?
Pizza's at Zamalek. Hey? And so far so good.
Al-Ahli.
Al-Ahli.
Yes.
But I'm sure he's enjoying a couple of Zamaleks.
Yeah.
You know, Egyptian fans are very fickle and they will give you a certain amount of time. And if they don't see results, they take decisions. Okay. And Pizzo is in the hornet's nest. But you know what? Despite his rather aggressive and intimidating demeanor, and the fact that he looks like a drunk taxi driver that wants to beat up somebody, you know, oftentimes, and I'm saying it in a humorous way, you can say what you like about Pizzo, but he knows how to coach.
Really?
Yes. The results speak for themselves. Okay. You might not like him, but he produces. The inverse is radio. In order to be heard, you must be liked. And sometimes in life, you cannot get if you don't give.
But Karl, how do you do that? How do you make somebody like you?
Do you like yourself?
Yes.
Show people that you like yourself, not in an arrogant, egotistical way, and people will like you. It follows. It's a law of nature. It's the law of attraction. Dumi, why do I like you? I don't know who the hell you are, other than what I've had to do with you here on campus at uni, okay? But it's my intuition. It is my sus. It is that extra component that I've always talked to you guys about. Knowledge of human nature and the feel you get from people. And if you can adopt that as best practice on radio, no matter how far the receiver of that vibe is, they will feel it. And good radio is something that you not only hear, but you feel. Like a good song.
Karl Kikillus, thank you so much for your time, man. And that's a wrap for myself, Dumisani, Gaddafi, Theletsane, and here, Karl Kikillus, man. I know that I was choking on my words, only because I haven't gotten used to this. You know, I'm a radio guy, cameras, man. But I have never seen anyone doing this. Just a quick disclaimer. If you see anybody doing this, chances are they took it from me. So I'm the first person to do this. That's a disclaimer. Snoopcheck, session number 2. Thank you so much, Karl Kikillus. Peace.
To me, before we go, don't get down on yourself. You have done a very good interview. I'll tell you why.
Why?
We were talking about just being yourself. If you make slight mistake, you're human. And that is an attractive quality. Don't apologize for the fact that you You might have. You see, you were critting yourself as we went along.
Yeah.
You see what I told you in the beginning, my man. You're fine. You got out of me what few other expert interviewers could get out of me. You know why? Because I warmed to you. I liked you. I trust you so I can open up. But if I felt otherwise, it would like being in the position of trying to open a safe without the combination.
Yeah.
And you've got the combination to open many safes. So, might I just say, not as a measure of being paid or being given a packet of chips for this exercise, you have a natural, innate talent, skill, and I think it's God-given, quite frankly, to warm yourself to human beings and make them feel warm in your presence. Job done, Baba. Job done.
Closing.